It's the J Bass Today Show. Get ready for a good time, a good time. It's the J Bass Today Show. Get ready to ride.
Welcome to the J Bass Today Show. Thank you so much for riding with me, and I hope you enjoy the show. God bless you to each of you. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode of the J Bass Today Show. As you see in my background, my special guest is Lady Kimberley Yancy. She's a minister, she's a councilwoman, and she's so much more. And so shortly she'll be joining us in this broadcast. But as I saw this title for this particular Our Daily Bread, which is something I'm trying to implement into each one of these J Bass Today shows, I instantly thought of her because she is indeed a woman of faith. This is the August 13th, 2017 Our Daily Bread, and it's entitled From Fear to Faith. And it's found in Habakkuk chapter 3, verses 16 through 19. Verse 19 reads, "The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer." The doctor's words landed in her heart with a thud. It was cancer. Her world stopped as she thought of her husband and children. They had prayed diligently, hoping for a different outcome. What would they do? With tears streaming down her face, she said softly, "God, this is beyond our control. Please be our strength." What do we do when the prognosis is devastating, when our circumstances are beyond our control? Where do we turn when the outlook seems hopeless? The prophet Habakkuk's situation was out of his control, and the fear that he felt terrified him. The coming judgment would be catastrophic. Yet, in the midst of the impending chaos, Habakkuk made a choice to live by his faith and rejoice in God. He did not place his confidence and faith in his circumstances, ability, or resources, but in the goodness and greatness of God. His trust in God compelled him to proclaim, "The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights." When we are faced with difficult circumstances, sickness, family crisis, financial trouble, we too have only to place our faith and trust in God. He is with us in everything we face. Dear God, I thank you that I can always turn to you. When I am faced with the difficulties of life, I can put my trust in you. Thank you that you are my refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. When faced with difficult circumstances, we can trust God to be our strength. All right, Lady Yancy is here.
It's the J Bass Today Show. Get ready to ride.
All right, God bless you to each of you. See, my special guest is here, Lady Kimberley Yancy. I say lady, but man, she has so many hats that she wears, and you see she's wearing a hat today. And so I am grateful for her being my special guest. She just celebrated a birthday on this Christmas. She's a Christmas baby. And so, Lady Yancy, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you feeling after another birthday?
Definitely blessed. I felt great. God has been faithful.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, you look blessed. You look blessed, and I know that God is doing so many great things in your life. One of the first things that we'll talk about is that she is my pastor's wife. She is the director of ministries at our church. She is my alto section leader in our church choir. And so at the church, she wears so many hats. And so just kind of walk us through what that means to you as a pastor's wife, and you're so much more than a pastor's wife. And I know that oftentimes it seems like in the church people want to put people, it's not just even the pastor's wife, but people in a box where you have that one title and that's who you are. But you wear many hats, as I will continue to say throughout this broadcast. And so just want you to share with us what that feels like.
Well, what it feels like, I've always been taught to serve. My parents were very active in the church, and I grew up under that. We were always serving. We were always first of all, going to church, and then our pastor was real big on, Pastor C.H. Ford was very big on evangelism. So it wasn't unfamiliar territory for us to go door to door and share who Christ is. Even I remember doing that at the age of 10 and 11 and 12 and all through my teen years. So my parents and my grandparents on both sides really taught about being a servant. So you say I wear a lot of hats, but to me, I'm just using the gifts that God has given me as a servant to, when you see a need, you just make yourself available to serve.
Okay, and that was just like the answer, because that is, that is the truth of a servant, and that is the heart of a servant. That wherever you can find your hands to do that, that's what you do. And so I see that it is evident in your life, and even as we venture out of the church, because I mean, there is so much. I'm sure there are others who recognize this, but just, since I'm starting at church, that there are so many areas in the church where your sacrifice and your servitude has made such a significant impact. In fact, I know our church would not be what it is without you. And so hats off to you, and just thank you so much for being you. And again, I am honored to have you on. And so one of the first things that when I first moved here, you had your own business. Not only is she a pastor's wife, director of ministries, alto section leader, but she is also an entrepreneur. And so I was able and fortunate to work with you for some time at EduTemp's Staffing Solutions. And so that was another hat. And so just one of the things is, as you'll understand about this show, is my motto here is that I have been encouraged to encourage. And so I usually try to save this to the end, but I'll save it to the end. I'll save it to the end, because I'm going to have you to encourage those who wear these different hats. And I may need to do it individually, like I was thinking, because you have so many. But so let's rewind. Let's do that.
Okay.
Those that who are serving in the position as a pastor's wife, and may have other gifts and talents that they want to utilize in the church, what would you say to encourage them to serve in those capacities without the judgment, or considering the judgment, or the behind the scenes? I can't even imagine what pastors' wives go through, but you can. And so what it is, what it feels like to be a pastor's wife, and the things that are said and done behind the scenes. What would you say to encourage her that she is not just a pastor's wife, that God has put something in her to share with the people as well?
Well, I think when I think of church, I think of kingdom, right? So I think there's a lot of things that we learn in church that are transferable skills that we can use for entrepreneurship, as far as because of organizing in the church and getting events together. I think that helped me when I started my staffing agency of EduTemp's, and we were providing substitute teachers for schools. And we did that full time for 5 years. And everything I tell people, everything that I know about business, I learned in church. Basically how to organize, how to call people, how to get on the phone, how to introduce yourself, because it's all about your presentation. So, but I always encourage people, find out what it is God wants you to do for that season and become the expert of it. Sometimes the hardest thing to do when you have multiple gifts is to try to find out which one is your expert gift, which one is your purpose-driven gift that will make room for you. Because just because you can do it does not mean that that's God's will for you.
That's good.
And so the one thing that I learned about entrepreneurship is that it made me take more risk and trust God even more, because I tell people I didn't know what I was doing, but I trusted God, and He provided the people that came around me that gave me insight. My sorority sisters of Delta Sigma Theta, one of my sorors, she was one of the leading staffing agencies in the state of Texas. She was right there in Houston. She offered her mentorship. That was amazing just to have that. So it enlarges your territory when you're able to take that leap of entrepreneurship, because you have to trust God even more, because I had a staff of 110. That was my largest volume. So that was a lot to manage. I think I was 36 years old. I was pretty young, 36, 37 when we started it. But I would tell anybody that was probably the most that I learned about God during that season, about trusting him and his hand and just saying, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know you know. And so I know you're going to provide for me. And I watched him do that. So I would tell anybody, especially if you live in America, because America is the number one country on the planet for a business. Texas is a pro-business state. If you're definitely in Texas, try it. The only thing you can do is just go up and down, and it's a wonderful ride. So I encourage, if that's something that you want to do, pray about it and try it. We did very well, and I would love there's something I would love to duplicate again. That's my staffing agency, and of course doing the plays and the writings. Those are the things I would love to do full time every day if I could.
Okay. Okay. And before you came on, that's why it took me so long to let you in the room. I try to incorporate Our Daily Bread into my broadcast now. And the one I came across that reminded me of you was entitled From Fear to Faith. And some of the things that you just said, not even knowing that I was talking about this particular Our Daily Bread, you just said it. And so to me, that just speaks again to your heart and why I believe God led me to read that particular passage as it pertains to this particular episode. And so thank you for those words. And as she was sharing about educational or the EduTemp staffing solution, but this is for any area that you might be feeling God pulling you toward. And my biggest thing is don't let whatever it is that you want to do be hindered in any kind of way because of one title. You being a pastor's wife or any other, whatever your position is in life, because this is not just for pastors' wives, but that's what I was thinking of at that time, that if God has put it in you, you need to try it. You need to do it. And as she has stated, keep God first, and he will direct your paths. And to me, she is the witness of that. And so we were talking, I started getting my words mixed up because now I need to introduce the NAACP. And when I first got introduced to NAACP, the first person to ever try to get me to be a part of an NAACP chapter or branch was Lady Yancy. And so she had me to become a part of the Dickinson Bay Area chapter. And now I have learned so much more about the NAACP. And I just recently found out that they have scholarships. So I'm going to be looking into that. But you are now, then you were the local president of the Dickinson Bay Area branch. And so now you are the state chair of the educational something.
No, education state chair, that's it.
Educational state chair.
Yeah,
All right.
educational chair. Yeah,
And
so
that is a big position. I believe you said that you are over, or you are the leader of all of the state chairs in the state.
all the educational chairs in the unit. Of all the units, we have over 50 active units.
Wow. And so how is it that, or you, wait, first and foremost, you're the chair of 50 different units?
So we have over 50 units, active units in the state of Texas of NAACP.
Okay.
So some of the units have educational chairs, some don't. So I give direction and help to those chairs. And also for areas of Texas that don't have an NAACP unit, and if there's an educational issue, then I'm supposed to help with that issue.
Okay. 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 And so one of the other hats that you wear, speaking of education, is that you've been a teacher for years. You've also substituted and you work in the educational system. And so just seeing so many of the things that are happening in education and knowing that there is a need for advocates in that area, would you just kind of speak to us on what you're doing and what your goals are and how that feels to go from president of a local branch to such a broad position?
It's definitely a huge responsibility because of what is happening to education in the state of Texas. There's a lot of canceling out of people of color when it comes to our history, because our history is American too. I'm an unapologetic American. I love being American. I love representing and helping with our country. And the NAACP is an organization that helps to make sure that the American dream is accessible for all of us Americans, no matter what color You are. When it comes to education, I'm a big believer that as an American, that it's important that we educate our youth, that we provide those opportunities to pursue liberty, pursue happiness, which our Constitution gives us a right to. My degree is in government and African American studies from the University of Texas at Austin. I'm very proud of being a graduate of that school because I've learned so much about the value of an education. And that's why for
Yes.
me, it is a true calling. And I'm grateful that we live in a country that believes in free public education, that every child here deserves to learn. The brain is a powerful thing, it's a muscle. And when we don't use that muscle, sometimes we're not using it to the best that it can be. But if there's nothing in it, then you're left to dogmatic ideas almost. So once you start teaching a child love and teaching them about forgiveness and growth and business and technology and engineering, there's so all of us have a gift that I believe God gives us. And that gift is supposed to help towards the survival of mankind, of us coming together. The Bible says that we are to reproduce and create, right? And God gave us dominion over the land. And I do believe that it is his will that we do what we can to educate all of our children, all of our American children. Right now, there is a big hit against what is education? How do we educate? How do we fund education? So that's why it's important that we have good advocates out there that are spreading the word of America and of our education, of the value of education in America. And so that's why, I take it very seriously that we need to come together as all Americans and help each other to realize that American dream.
It is interesting to hear you say these things because this semester in school, I had to take a U.S. history course.
Mhm.
And to be honest, when I first was told that I had to take this course, I just didn't understand why we're being forced to take this class. But as we studied, I really began to see you a lot in our studies and some of the things that I've heard you say and things that you are pushing and promoting as far as it pertains to education, because there are that even as much as I have heard about American history and studied in elementary and high school,
Mhm.
but it's been 20 years
Yeah,
since I've been out of high school, but
yeah.
uh, my eyes were really open to some things because I understand it in a different way in my 40s than I would have even studying it then. And one of my first appreciations as I realized that America was really built on the backs of slaves is the fact that they did not want us to learn how to read.
Mhm.
And so when you talk about education, I think about how impacted I was. It even brought. I'm trying to hold back the tears now. I'm a crybaby, but I was just
Uh-huh.
thanking God that I was born when I was and had the opportunity to learn to read because I love to read. And I remember, just reading and at home, I would just sit around reading and didn't even understand how big of a privilege that was.
Mhm.
And so to hear you say these things and now to have experienced this particular class and just to see uh, people like Frederick Douglass, how they did not want him
Mhm.
to learn how to read, but he became one of the most influential voices because he had experienced slavery, because he had been chastised and beat
Mhm.
for reading and doing
Right.
something that we take for granted today. And
Mhm.
so I want to personally salute you. I mean, literally, while I was in class, I would be thinking, this is Lady Yancy here. I can hear her advocating for this. But we have overcome so much as a people. And the truth is, we've had to fight to overcome. We've had to that, and I'm saying we, but our ancestors, they really had to put up a huge fight for us to have the opportunities and the privileges that we do have today. And
Mhm.
so I want to thank you again for being one of the ones in our generation to speak up on our behalf to make sure that those privileges and opportunities are not taken away from us.
Mhm.
Uh, there are children nowadays who do not understand. I can't even say that I have much understanding, but just on the principle of thinking about reading, that really impacted me. And so I'm sitting here. I have a child in the background that you all don't see, but he's been struggling in reading and not wanting to do as much reading as he can. And he's a great reader. And
Mhm.
so, what would you say to our youth who don't fully understand what we've come through as a people in this country and what it means to be a Black American who has the privileges that we have and the fight that's needed to keep those privileges?
But what I would say is read, because reading definitely expands the brain. Like I said, the brain is a muscle, and that's why you always see teachers really pushing that. One thing that I learned about reading is that the more you read, the more you expand that muscle. The more you study. I always tell kiddos, it's not about who's the smartest in the room. It's about who's willing to work the hardest. Those are the people that become the all A's, the magna cum laude. It's not, some of them are just not naturally bright, but they are willing to work harder than you. And so it's not about who's the smartest in the room. It's about who's willing to work the hardest. And what I would tell our young people is that you got to remember 100 years ago, a lot of African Americans intimidated people when they could read, because it was expected that we would not be allowed to read. And that was just used for power, just to maintain a certain power structure. So that's why the opportunity to education was denied as you're trying to set up and keep a certain type of power structure. And I thank God for those Americans of all colors who fought to make sure that people of all colors could learn how to read, would have access to reading, would have access to an education. And education has to come with funding. And unfortunately, there are a lot of communities that are defunded and are not giving the same tools to a good education because of the way we fund education in Texas, which is through property taxes primarily. And so we are looking at ways to make sure that education is funded properly all over Texas. That is the key to a civilized society, is proper funding of education and making sure that every child, regardless if you live on A Street or B Street, you have a opportunity. Because one thing about it, in our country, education is not a civil right. There's nowhere where it says that. So we will continue to fight for the advocacy of proper funding for schools. And that's why the fight is so big when it comes to vouchers versus public schools. And I'm a firm believer that every child should have free access to a good education. I just think that's, we look at Christmas and Santa Claus. Every kid deserves Santa Claus, right? Well, we believe that every kid deserves a proper education. We are the #1 country on the planet by far when it comes to resources and things of that nature. There's no reason why we cannot fund education in our country. The question is how important is education to your community? And I'm, as a teacher, and I'm a third generation educator. My brother's a coach. My mom was an educational social worker. My grandmother was a teacher in the segregated schools and then in the integrated schools as well. And so that's kind of in our DNA, right, to push education. But I would tell anyone that's pretty much the only free thing you're going to get in America is an education. So go for it. Don't waste that time. So our parents, stress that to your kids. Make sure that they're every day. Punctuality and presence makes a difference when it comes to education, and value that and teach your kids to love school and to make sure that you advocate for your school, for your child while they're attending school as well. Pay attention to what's happening, because right now there is a lot happening in education. It seems to me that the ones that are screaming the most are getting what they want, even though it may not be for the best of all children.
Wow. Thank you so much for those words. I'm praying that my young one over here is listening to that, because it really is so important. And I see the need for the fight. And so thank you for serving. Serving, again, is our big word for this particular broadcast, I see, but serving in that capacity, because as I know you see and know that it is such an important area of our lives. And for us to be able to have this knowledge, it is an honor. And so we certainly want to see everyone else be able to
Well, how
have
do
those.
you feel? How do you feel about going back to school? I think that's amazing because we need more adults to go back to college. How do you feel being back in school?
Well, it's certainly an answered prayer. Now,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
because it's something that I know it's in me. I was the one when we played school as children. I was the teacher, and so I was always one of my steps of boasting or whatever you want to call it. As a child, I was able to teach my brother how to read before he even started school, because I would bring home to him what I was learning, and so he was able to read just from my bringing it home. And so I know it was in me to do, and to be inducted into an honor society, because I have had all A's, 3 semesters in back to back. Yeah,
Yes.
I really, but as I'm saying, in us talking about you being the educationalist chair, that I'm seeing the need for it. And of course, of course, to have all A's, this was not my testimony in high school. It was not my testimony, but I'm taking it more serious now, because I do realize just how important a good education is. And, in this U.S. history class, I started off slow, and I was concerned I was going to get a B in the class, it would be my first B. But as the class progressed, I even spoke about reading the book by Frederick Douglass, and you were saying how it was a good read. I'm like, I knew she had read it. I knew. But just the impact of that book, it has such a major impact in my reading and understanding, and just couldn't have imagined, the things that he suffered to attain the level of success that he did. And we're looking at his life, and we tend to do this with people. We look at the notoriety and the fame, and that people know their name and those kind of things, but we really don't know the fight in the background that those individuals have had to endure. And even as I think about you, the next thing I was thinking to talk about is being the councilwoman of our city. And even in this, you are having to fight. It's a fight. It's been a fight pretty much since before you got into office. And I'm seeing you being this woman who is not allowing fear to control her, but every day you are getting up and walking by faith. And from my understanding, the councilwoman seat is not a paid or seat that is to be coveted by anyone. This is something that you are doing because you are a servant. And so I've seen improvements in our city and in our district. And so another hat that you wear is the councilwoman. And so what does that mean to you in this time and season of your life?
One thing that I've discovered is that God sets you up for this life. He gives you everything that you need to be successful. And to be quite honest, I'm having the time of my life. It kind of brings all of my different skill sets, my church background, my service background, my membership in my sorority, the community service that I've done with my parents, and my workflow, being director of public housing, doing education. It kind of brings everything to the table. And that's the part now that the age of 52, and you don't understand why you're going through things in your 20s and your 30s. But as a person that's now middle-aged, you kind of feel like, oh my goodness, this is why I had to go through that, So, but I really enjoy seeing the difference that being at the table makes. And I always tell people, you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And so being able to speak up for our district and represent the district. And when I get down, sometimes I remember that somebody went into a booth and checked my name.
Wow.
And so there's a responsibility, right, that comes with that. And so even with right. And so thank you. So even with all the haters and all that, you remember that there are people that came together and said, we want you to represent us. And so I take that very seriously. And I remember that I'm there to speak as a voice, as a representative to the people. That's the beauty of our democracy, is that we still matter. Even with all these different type of populist governments that's popping up all across the world, where you have dictators. Here in America, we value the voice of the people.
Democracy.
Still today we do. And so it's important that we remember that we're there first, to help keep our communities safe. One of the first things that we did in my district was to try to get a life study. to see the issues that were happening. And we had the darkest district, so we met with Texas, New Mexico, and they were trying to put some of those old lights in. We don't know. We want LED lights. We want the best lights. You know, we're paying $40,000 a month. We want the best lights. And so being at the table and speaking up, I tell people it's one thing to have power, but it's another thing to know what to do with that power.
Yeah.
So whoever that you elect, you got to make sure that they know what to do when they get in that position. And so I study a lot. I read a lot. I look at what are the best practices for cities of our same size to see what we can do to, save money and yet at the same time provide the best resources that we can for our community. And so I hope people have seen some of the things that we've done just in the last 2.5 years. So anytime you're doing something amazing, the devil always gets busy. You're always going to have your naysayers. I'm the first African-American woman to ever sit in this seat of District A, coming behind some very big shoes to fill. All of them have been men. So, there's nothing like putting the flavor of an American woman in that seat, to bring some insight to it. But I am having one of the best seasons. Does it get hard at times when you have to hear some of the rhetoric? But that's really when I know that I'm doing something great. Coretta Scott King was called Jezebel. Rosa Parks, he was called all sorts of names. That kind of comes with the territory of doing some things that make a difference in the lives of all people. You're always gonna have some people that are kind of perhaps used to having all the benefits, but then when you begin to open up that door to all Americans, but it's only a few. For the most part, people come to us with ideas, and we do what we can, and what we can't do, we let them know, hey, didn't get the votes for that because you need 3 votes to get things done. But they do know that I'll always try. And that's the beauty. I've learned so much about being an American. And I always encourage people to run for office. It'll blow your mind when you see the opportunity and the influence that you can have to make a difference in your community. So that part of my life right now, I am enjoying. It is worth everything we've had to endure. It is.
Good.
And so people, are you going to run again? Yes, I am.
Okay.
And again and again and again. If God says so, if it's the will of God, But yeah, this season has been a blessing for sure.
Good. I am glad to hear that. And as I was listening, all I could think of is again thinking about our history. And for a long time, first we were denied citizenship, but then we were not included in politics. And so to be in this generation where there is seemingly an influx of African American or Black Americans who, because we are not from Africa, we were born here in America. But anyway, to see an influx of our people in office all throughout the United States. In fact, we have a Black mayor, we have a Black councilwoman, neighboring cities have Black mayors and what have you, that we are doing some amazing things. And to know that you're in that position and you're using your God-given skills to be a blessing to the community, that means so much, because one thing I know is that you will speak up for the needs of the people here. And so I salute you again in that respect. And I just, for those who have thought about running, I do want you to give a word of encouragement to them, and me too, because I might leg along once I get a couple of degrees under my name. But
for sure,
for all of us, because what I do understand, and I'm learning more and more as I look at some of the people that I look into as inspiration for my journey, that each one, even now, it's not as if you go through one season and then everything is happy and good. But there's constant criticism, there's constant issues that you're going to have to deal with. And sometimes if you are not aware of that, and you're not mentally and spiritually prepared for that, you do not know how to handle it. And you can see people crumble behind the pressures that come with things such as an office, things such as being a pastor's wife, things such as as being a chair of any organization, for being an entrepreneur. There are things that come at you that you wouldn't normally have to handle if you're just laying low, working a 9 to 5, and letting that be, even though there are issues that come with the 9 to 5, but especially when you're innovative and you're pushing for things. And so I guess we're back to another word of encouragement. What would you say to these people, just to let them know that it comes with it, but it's worth it?
For me, Luke 1:37, for with God nothing shall be impossible, has been like the theme of everything we do. My grandmother, who received her master's from the University of Texas in 1963, and it wasn't until 1956 that they started allowing African Americans to even attend UT. So I can imagine what she had to endure, going to having graduated from HT and then going to UT in 1963. So her name is Annabelle Clark Prosser, and she always taught me the value of saying, because I said, I can't do it. She said, yes, you can. She would say, can't is not a word. And I remember being 5 years old, and there was a little tumble that I couldn't do because I was kind of chubby, right? So I remember my grandmother, she had to be like 51 at the time, or 50, and she actually got on the ground with me, and she taught me that tumble where I could get up, and she made me do it over and over and over again. And now at 52, I still remember her saying to me, can't is not a word. You can do it if you put your mind to it. But she made me practice over and over. And mind you, I had an audience, right? So I love to perform, even as a 5-year-old. And so she kept doing it with me until I learned how to do it. So I went back to Houston. I went back to Dickinson. I think I was in kindergarten or first grade. And I was able to do that tumble in PE class because my grandmother got on the ground with me. And she was determined that I would learn how to do it. And I think your support system does matter, to have people that build you up and that speak life into you. I thank God for my husband and for my family, my mom, my dad, who's now deceased. They have always been very encouraging. I remember when I was dating Pastor Yancy, I used to tell him, "You're going to ride with me, pick up your feet, because ain't nobody dragging me." That's not how we roll. So that was, that was, and then when I got to know him, I was like, oh, good. I gotta roll with him. He was rolling a little faster. He was pastoring at 24, so I wasn't even halfway in my career at that time. But when he started pastoring, I had to kind of keep up with him. So we've always kind of been those personalities that we had a very supportive family behind us, always cheering us on, always, and that makes a difference. Your energy that you keep around you makes a difference. But I always believe that pain has purpose. I was a child that had a stutter, and I actually had to go to classes for it. And so when people say, "Oh, she talks too much," I kind of like, whatever. I know how it feels not to talk. And it was just, I started stuttering because I felt inferior. I went from a school district that was primarily very diverse to a school district where I was the only Black girl in class, and I didn't know how to deal with that. And how I dealt with it is that I stuttered, and it was laughable. I mean, my friends would laugh to Kingdom Come, like, "Oh my God, Kim Jones has to read. It's gonna take forever." And I could read, I just couldn't get it out. So I had to learn to overcome that, So I think when you trust God and you ask God, if, because I would talk to God as a little 10, 11-year-old, if you are God, take away my stuff.
Yeah.
If you take away my stuff,
I
will live for you, and I will be bold for you. And that was a promise. At the age of 14, that's exactly what he did for me. So I know the power of prayer, and this is not something that you can do without a higher power. It just, you won't, because you will crumble. And I tell people, crumbling is okay as long as you get back, put yourself back together, because everything that goes up comes down. That's just the beauty of our life, So, but just keep trying, just keep putting that foot in front of the other. People say, "Oh, Miss Yancy, you seem so strong." I say, "What? I'm a crybaby. I will cry in a minute." But I get on my knees and I pray and I ask God to give me the strength that I need to complete the task. And if you ask him that, because if he gives you an assignment, he is going to give you the tools to complete that assignment. A lot of times we don't reach for the tools, but they're there. And a lot of times your tools to complete your assignment may come from places that you don't even realize. I tell people all the time, I was not planning to run for office. It wasn't something I wanted to do at that particular moment. I had ran for mayor I think 2 years prior. But when I ran for city council, that was not on my agenda. God did all of that. But when he tells you to do something, you got to do it. If you want to see, the beauty of serving God is that he gives you a permissive will, then he gives you his will. But the beauty of who God is that it's still your choice.
Yeah.
I'll tell anybody in a million years, I love being a politician. I love I love government. I love my country. I've always been that person. But I know my gift is right, no doubt, writing and speaking. I know that's the gift that God wants me to really dive into. And that when we talk about fear and faith, there's still some areas of my life that I'm still like, I don't want to do that. But I know that that's the gift. That part is like, it's a kind of like, Jay, if you told the Lord, I'll never play the piano again, and that's your gift. So me and the Lord, we kind of like, he's like, you're doing everything else, but what I've been telling you to do. And I'm like, but yeah, but I want to do it. So you do have to get in his perfect will. You do have to eventually try to find your will, that way to the perfect will of God. And I think when you get in that space, he will blow your mind.
As I'm listening, I'm thinking about the first thing I'm thinking about is you mentioning about playing and the support system. And this is probably be my own personal show, but I just mentioned it just because you said that that growing up, I did not have that push. I did not have that support. And so that's probably my area to encourage others in, because had I listened to the voices that I was surrounded by, and that was family, church members, period, I wouldn't be who I am today. And we know that my music has opened so many doors for me. And so I can't even begin to imagine what else I would be doing had I listened to those voices in that season. And so just hearing you share this, it is a blessing when you're able to take those beatings and get back up again and really pursue what it is that God put into your heart. And I wasn't, no one in my immediate family was really into music like that. Now, my grandmother, she sung in the church choir, but even in that instance, none of them said, y'all leave him alone. Let's get him piano lessons. Let's he wants to do until later on. Then they started seeing I was not backing down. I was not giving up. And so, even thinking about that, not backing down and not giving up, I see that strength in you. And, it's interesting that we face those low moments, and hearing you speaking about the stuttering and the things that come along with that, those feelings of inferiority. And when I hear that, my thought is, no one really understands your journey and what it takes to be you, and the things that you've had to overcome to be alive in this moment, to have the opportunities that are afforded to you because you overcame and refused to stay down when you crumbled. You kept getting back up, and that has made you who you are today. And so to see that strength, to be a witness personally of that strength, I'm at a place of just applauding you. That's why I wanted you to be one of my special guests on this show, because I knew you had so much great input that would help those who will see this later. And so I really appreciate you coming on. We're not done, because I do want to get to, I pray that one day I'll be able to get you and Pastor on, but I want to have you on first by yourself. Because I know that, just your story alone is a whole episode. Plus, we probably could do a whole documentary based on things that you're able to share and help people with. But I know that I've heard you say this as a wife and a mother. Some of the things that you were still pursuing dreams and goals while your children were in your house, but now that they're all grown, and well, not necessarily gone, but they're grown, that was when you began to branch out into some of these other areas, including politics. And so what would you say to those, I was going to say mothers, but let's just say parents who have taken a break from their dreams and their goals to raise a family, and they're concerned, because one thing I know about a dream is that if you have that dream, or you have a certain goal, it continues to eat at you. And one of the scriptures that I hold on to is hope maketh the heart sick. Hope deferred maketh the heart sick. And those who may be heart sick, who are waiting on their opportunity to pursue their dreams and goals, but they are also stepping up to take care of their families, to take care of other business they need to take care of. Just like you said, you're an author. That's another thing that we need to note, that you are an author and playwright, have an amazing book, and The Confessions of a Preacher's Wife. And just to know that that is in your heart to continue, just like my music is in my heart to continue. What do you say to those who need encouragement, especially those who have families and they're just kind of waiting for the opportunity to get it done?
What I would say is that parenting is your number one priority. Being able to pour into children and raise them. The beauty of God is that if it's in his will, he'll give it to you back full circle. And that's what I tell anyone. Yeah, because I think my first couple of years as a mother, I was like, am I ever gonna go? Because everything is about the children, everything was about the ministry. But as I followed the man of God and I followed my husband and supported what he wanted to do, God always seemed to give me what I needed. And it didn't always come in big bursts at one time, but it was like, okay, you can do this, and and open that door. And then I had a husband. I have a husband that's always big at do you, do you. He pushed me to continue to figure out the evolution of Kim Jones. He was always, pushing me. But I will say our first priority was always the children. We had 3 boys, and then we adopted our daughter. So we went out and got another kid. And that's been a joy to watch them, because so much of what God has put in us, we put in them. Every time they sing a song or they come to church, or they give, we know that that's carrying on that Christian tradition, right, of glorifying God. And I get tears every time I hear my boys sing or pray, or my daughter, who loves to say, Mom, I'm a tither, Shit, I'm like, come on with it then, because I ain't seen you this year. But it's just, I love to see them get excited about honoring God. That's about, and I know they would not have had that unless we had spent that time with them. I think as a parent, there's no perfect parent. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. But the beauty of God is that when you put your family, you put God first. And when you put God first, that family's next, he blesses you. He has a way of coming back and blessing you. So my dad died when I was 25, and I thought my whole world was upside down when my father died, because he was so much to us, and so much support and confidence and laughter and joy. But you realize that what they put in you never goes away.
That's right.
So, what you put in your kids is so important during that time of growing up, that by the time they reach adulthood, they've gotten the best of you, right? And so what I would tell people is put your family first, spend that time that you need. I think our kids are no different from us. They just don't, they're not getting as much nurturing as our generation did, because of
That's
cell phones and technology. So I think it's even more important to have that time where there's no technology. You're just eating and talking, you're spending that time together. But I'm a firm believer that God will find ways to bless you when you're doing the right things. He will give you, he will give you your dreams, but you have to be obedient unto him. Never abandon his church, read his word, get to know who he is. And when you get to know the word of God, it opens up so much spiritually that you really can't see in the physical. You'll understand parenting, you'll understand why kids need that time with you, because it's really the time that kids need with their parents. And I'm, now that I have 3 grandchildren, I'm loving that, being able to instill into them what my grandparents did for me. And my grandparents gave me that added level of confidence, that added level of comfort, to know that whatever I need, they would provide. And see, when you have good parenting, it gives you a picture of who God is too. And that's important. If you want people to see God, let them see the God in you first.
Wow, I'm taking that in, and it just always brings me back to my thought of story, because when that, maybe that's why some people have a distorted view of God, because of the distorted view that their parents put into them. Wow, that's a very good thought. Lady Yancy, thank you so much for being my guest today. You have shared so much wisdom, and even the thought of how the Word of God opens our eyes spiritually in ways that we would not be open in the natural. Because there's a lot of times in conversation and experiences, there's always the Word that's at the backdrop, feeding your thoughts and feeding your decisions and choices, and you're remembering what God said in His Word. And even when it comes to pursuing dreams and goals, just being able to know that I can do. If I know that I can do all things through Christ, and that He gives me that strength, then I'm charged to go after it in a
Right.
way that I probably wouldn't have if I didn't have that word. And so, thank you again so much for being my guest. Is there anything else that you want our audience to know about you before we go?
I think in every community we have people that desire support. We have, I've always said that Galveston County is one of the most talented counties I've ever been in. And not to say I've been in a whole lot of counties, but there's so much. We're one of the oldest counties in Texas, but there's so much talent here. And I just pray that we look at our neighbors and our friends and see what we can do to support their dreams. And never abandon the church. I tell people right now, the church in these times will be our safest place. If you want to know about God, get in the Bible. If you want to know about God, go to church. Find out where He lives. Find out how He moves. So much of, to me, some of the most valuable things in life are the things that are free. But because we always put a cost to everything, we don't understand that the real answer is in God. And so when people look at us and say, "Oh, you're so strong," and I'm like, "Not really," but I serve a God that is able, that can allow me to wear these hats. That gives me the opportunity to say, and sometimes I feel like, "Oh, should I be doing this?" But then you get in, it's like, "Yeah, I should." But the cool thing about God is that He's always moving, right? He's always up to something. And so there's so much about God that will blow your mind when you get in tune with Him. It's not your strength. When God said, "I'm making man after my own image," we are His hands. We are the ones that He desires to use. So don't. I always tell people when they say, "Oh, I want to commit suicide," I'm like, no, you're killing the God in you. There's something that He wants to do through you. But I
It's in your
think
hand.
right. So we allow Satan to devalue who we are. We are precious to God. We are something that He created so that He could use for us. You are usable. You are valuable. God wants to use you. Never, ever, ever look at yourself as if your gift doesn't matter. You matter to this world. You're here. I went to see The Color Purple, so that whole thing about I'm here, right? You may not
Mhm,
like me,
mhm.
I may be this,
Yeah.
I may be that, but you can't
Mhm.
say that I don't exist. I'm
That's
here.
right.
And because
Mhm.
I'm here, I have purpose. So to your audience, I would say, you're here. Because you're here, you have purpose. Go for it. Let's go.
Right. Let's go. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. What a word to end out on. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Mhm.
Audience, I really pray that you have been blessed by the words that have been spoken by this wise woman of God. Even at 52, she is a woman of wisdom with great experience, and I hope that has come through. And her heart for service has come through to you to know that whatever it is that you desire to do, desire to be. And even as I listened to her in the ending, uh, you may not have that support system. You may have been in places where you've been bullied, you've been criticized, and you've been talked down so that water is starting to fill your boat and you're feeling that negativity. And even her mentioning feeling suicidal. I know that feeling because when you've been beat down so many times, it becomes an issue of understanding that you're here and that you're valuable and that you're useful, which are all words that she said that we are. And a lot of times it takes living another day to and going through and continuing to go to understand that. But I'm here as a witness that it is a
Yeah.
blessing to get to that place. It really is. And so just keep living. And I pray that you have heard her words of wisdom. Thank you again, Lady Yancy, for being my special guest. And we got to do this again. All right. God bless you all.
All right.
It's the J Bass Today Show. Now I'm telling you that it's your